Hey guys, and welcome to another C++ and game tutorial. In today's episode, I'm not really going to be teaching you anything new. Instead, I'm going to go back over vectors and lists in a practical setting by taking our old little shop kind of game thing, wasn't really even a game, and we're going to turn it into something much cooler. We're going to make it so that you can have multiple shops. We're going to make it so that when you buy and sell items, you use money, and maybe even make it to where you can sell items back to the shop. Honestly, I don't really know what we're going to do today. We're just going to kind of enhance this and see where we can go with it. So if you're really confident with lists and vectors and classes, you can skip this episode, but I would recommend you go ahead and watch and maybe even program along and see if you can learn anything. So if you haven't got the code, go ahead and check in the description, and there should be a link to this code that you can grab so you can work along with me. Make sure you watch the review episode if you don't know what any of this code does. But first thing we want to do is define what an item is. So right now, items are just strings. That's not really that interesting. Shouldn't an item have like a value or like a defense stat or an attack stat or something like that? Well, I think it should. So what I think we should do is make an item class that actually has some information about the item. Now in the future we're going to learn about polymorphism and we'll be able to make an even better class system, but right now we're just going to do a basic item class that has certain properties that we can set. So let's go ahead and make a new class. So I'm going to right click over here, click add class, and I'm going to make the class called items, or just item. There we go, item, then we should get item.h, item.cpp, finish that. Alright, so that will create it. We're going to delete the destructor because I haven't taught you all that. It's not really important that you know it just yet. Alright, so here is our item class. Now it has a constructor that doesn't do anything. Let me zoom in here. So here's item.h, it's already made for us. Here's item.cpp. Let's go ahead and put some properties into the item class. So let's put some private variables. Let's make a name, so we'll say string name, and that's underscore name since it's private. And let's go ahead and up here at the top include string, since we're using strings, and let's also do a using namespace std. Alright, so we got a string name. Okay, what other properties does an item have? Let's say int value. That'll be the value of the item. Then let's say, how about int count? So that's the number of items. So for instance, we could use this count variable to make stacks of items, like if you have 64 boots or something like that. And what else? Name, value, count. We don't need to get super detailed with this. Let's just stay with these variables for now. So let's go ahead and write some accessor functions, some getters. So here's our getters. Now remember, these are private variables, so in order to get them outside of the class, we need to write getter functions. We could make these public variables and it wouldn't horribly break anything. It'd be totally fine to access them, but this is just a good practice to get used to. There's a lot of argument on whether you should actually even use getters and setters or if you should just use public variables. It's fine if you just use getters and setters. It's a safe bet, don't worry. So we're going to say string get name, and that will return string or return name like that. Remember, I like to write my getters in the header. You can write yours in the CPP file if you want and do a prototype here. Int get value, and that'll return value. And then int get count, and that'll return count. Now I'm not going to make setter functions for any of these name or values, and we should probably make a set count in case we want to give the player some items, but let's also make, for instance, an add item or remove item function so that if they want to add another item to their inventory of that type, it'll just increment it or something like that. Let's try that. So we'll say void add, we'll just call it add, and that will be defined in the CPP file, and we'll do void remove, and that'll remove one. We'll call it add one and remove one. That's fine. So let's put these functions in here. We got to put item before it like that. Add one, remove one. You could do this in a completely different way if you want. Remember, this is just kind of on the fly. making a little program here. It may not be perfect. So we're going to say count plus plus, and here with remove one, we're going to say if count is greater than 0, because we can't subtract 1 if there aren't any there. Then we're going to say count minus minus. All right, so that will add an item to our inventory or remove one from our inventory. And then, let's see, the constructor should probably construct an item. So let's pass in the name and the value, and then we'll initialize the count to 0. Or should we initialize it to 1? We should probably initialize it to 1, indicating that we have one of those items. So we're going to say string name and string value, int value, which is going to be like the value in gold coins or something. Let's take these and copy them to our definition here so we don't get errors. And we're going to say, we're going to say name equals name, value equals value, and then we're also going to say count equals 1. So we start out with one of those items, at least. And let's also go ahead and make a set count. So void set count, in case we want to, for instance, set the number of items in a shop to a specific number. So we'll say, we need to pass in a count variable, of course, so int count. And we'll say our local variable count equals the parameter count, like that. So that will set count to count. Awesome. All right, so here's our item class. I'm happy with that. So let's go ahead and include item up here in main.cpp. Include, and we do, remember, parentheses, or sorry, quotation marks, and it's going to be item.h. If you're in Visual Studio, it should pop up. All right, cool. So now we don't need this stuff anymore. We're going to pretty much gut a lot of this stuff. Let's go ahead and gut this. We're going to get errors. Let's gut this constant num items. We're going to use instead a list, I would say. All right, and we get a bunch of errors. We're probably going to rewrite all this. What I think we should do is have a shop class. So we can have multiple shops very easily. We just make a new shop object, and then we can use that shop. So let's make a new class. Let's right click over here, add, and we're going to make another class. This one will be called shop. There we go. Okay, delete the destructor as always, at least for now. All right, and I'm going to go a little faster this time. Private variables. Our shop needs a name, string name, and our shop also needs some items, right? It needs a list of items in the shop, and of course we got to include string up here. Include string. Now, since it needs a list of items, I'm going to go ahead and include up here at the top item.h. So now I can make items in the shop. Now, if you only had to use items in the CPP file, you would include it in the CPP file instead. But since our shop needs the items to be declared right here as private variables, we're going to go ahead and include it up here. And I'm going to make the items reside in a list so that it's easy to add and remove them. So we're going to say include list, list like this. Now, should we use a list or should we use a vector? Well, a vector is going to be more efficient, most likely, but a list is going to make a little more sense if we care about the order. When we're using a vector, remember, if we move one from the back to do that little copy trick, we're going to mess up the order. Now, if we want to sort them alphabetically, we can fix that. But what if we don't want to sort them alphabetically? What if we just want to retain the order whenever we remove an item so it's not confusing? If that's the case, we're going to go ahead and just use list. All right, so we have a string name. Now we need a list of items. So we're going to say list item. And we're going to say items, like that. So here's the items for sale. Now let's also say the shop has a certain amount of money. So int money, right? Because it has to start out with money. Otherwise, it's not going to be able to buy items from the player. Okay, so what do we want to do here? We want to be able to print out the shop. So void print shop. And what else do we want to do? We want to, let's see, we want to get an item. So we want to purchase an item. So we could say item return or buy or purchase, yeah, purchase item. So that will return an item from the item list, and we will call the item by name. So we're going to have string name. So it's going to purchase one of the items from the list, and we're going to call it by its name. So we'll pass that in. I'm trying to do all this stuff without using pointers and things like that. So if you are more familiar with C++, this may look a little weird to you, but for you beginners, this should seem just fine. And it is fine. It's going to be awesome. All right, so that will purchase an item. Let's see, what else do we need? Let's do add item to the shop. So void add item. And what we should do is make a item to pass in, item new item, like that. Let's see, anything else? Let's go ahead and start with these, and we can work from there when we determine what we want our little game to actually be like. This will probably be a long episode because I'm kind of doing this on the fly. There we go. There's our shop. Print statement, purchase item, and add item, like that. Alright, so let's print the shop first. We're going to use IOStream to do a cout. So let's go ahead and include it here. Include IOStream. Are we using namespace std? Let's go ahead and do that up here. Using namespace std. Alright, so the way we're going to print the shop is we're going to say cout welcome to, and then the shop name. And let's do stars. I love stars, asterisks, whatever. Okay, so that will say welcome. And let's do 2 new lines. And then let's iterate through the list of items and print out each one. So remember, if we want to iterate through a list, we need to use an iterator. So we're going to say list, and it's a list of items, : iterator, lit. And then we are going to use that to iterate. So for lit is equal to, what is it? Items.begin. Lit is not equal to items.end. Lit plus plus. That will iterate through our list. And then if we want to print them out, all we have to do is say cout. And then to get what lit is pointing to, we say star lit. And then we can say dot and then whatever. But since the star operator has precedence over the dot, this isn't going to work. This isn't something I've actually showed you yet. So what we have to do is surround the star lit in parentheses. Otherwise it won't work. It's kind of weird. You have to do that. When in doubt, always use parentheses all over the place. All right, so dot get name. So that will cout the name. And let's go ahead and count them. Let's like number them on the screen or something. So we'll say int I equals 0. And each time we go through this, we'll say I++, and we'll print out an I here at the front. So we'll say I, and then like a dot, and then a space. And then that, and then we also need to say actually how many of them there are. So let's put a times, and then the count. So we're going to say star lit dot get count, like that. That will get the count. All right, so if we want to add an item, what we need to do is, all right, so this is going to add a brand new item. What we probably should do is see if that item already exists. We're going to assume in our game that no 2 distinct items have the same name. So what we can do is take this new item, make sure it doesn't already exist, and if it does already exist in the list, we'll just increment that one's count by 1. Otherwise, we'll push it to the back of the list. So let's go ahead and iterate through the list. So we need to make another iterator. I'm just going to copy paste it like this. All right, so for lit is equal to, let's just copy this. Let's not write all this out like that. That'll iterate through our list. Now each time we go through, we're going to say if, and then we're going to say, remember, parentheses star lit dot get name is equal to new item dot name dot get name. So if they have the same name, what we're going to do is say starlit dot add 1. So that will add 1 to our current item in our item list. And then we're just going to not use this anymore. We'll return right here. So whenever we're in a void function, we can quit out of the function immediately with just a return semicolon. We don't put return 0 since it doesn't return an integer. We can just type return and that will quit. Now if we never return from this, so if we finish this for loop without returning, that means that this item does not exist in our list yet. It's not there. So what we need to do is add it to it. So what we're going to do is say items dot push, we'll just put it in the back, push back new item. So that will put a new item in our list. Super simple. Let's see, what else? Purchase item. So what we're going to do here is iterate through the list again, like this. Yeah. Okay. And then what we're going to do is see if that item exists. So we're going to say if starlit dot get name is equal to name, which is what we're going to have the user type in the name of the item he wants instead of typing in a number. So I guess I don't really need the numbers here, but that's what I did. Whatever, you can, like I said, you can do this however you want. So if starlit.getName, which means the current list item that we're iterating to, if its name is equal to the name we're asking for, then what we're going to do is say we're going to make a copy of that item and we're going to return it because we only want to buy one of them, right? So what we should do is make a new item that is a copy of that and make sure it only has a count of 1, and then we're going to return that item. So we're going to say item new item equals starlit. So that's going to make a copy of the current one. Then we're going to say new item dot set count, because right now the count of new item is equal to whatever the count of our current list iterators item is, which could be like 10 or something. We don't want to return 10 swords, we just want to return 1. So we're going to set count to 1. And then since we're taking one item away from starlit, we're going to say starlit dot remove 1. And then we need to check and see if starlit is no longer has any items left. So if starlit with parentheses, if starlit dot get count is equal to 0, meaning there's none left, then we're going to remove it from the list. So what we can do is call items dot erase with lit, and that will erase the current items. And then finally, we're going to return this new item that we made right here. We're going to say return new item. So the only thing about this function that's actually a problem is we have no way of indicating if the item didn't exist in the shop, because we have to return an item from this function. So what I think we should do instead is make this a Boolean function that returns true if the item exists and false if it doesn't exist. And what it's going to do is use a reference parameter item, and it's going to set that variable. So let's do that. We're going to say item new item here. We're going to pass in the item we want to change, and we're going to make this a Boolean function like that. So I'm going to copy this and fix our definition up here. There we go, remove that. Okay, good, good, good. So now all we have to do to change this is say return true here, meaning we found it. And instead of making a new item here, we're just going to delete that and say new item equals starlit, like that. And then down here, if we get through this for loop, that means we didn't find the item we were asking for. So we're going to say return false. All right, so we have purchase item, add item, and print shop. That should be good for now. Let's go ahead and start working on our main.cpp. All right, so we don't need print shop anymore because we put print shop in shop.cpp. We probably do need to buy items, but I think we might want to do that in the shop.cpp. Let's go ahead and get rid of print shop. Now what are we going to do about the player inventory? Now what I'm going to do is just make a list of items, and that's going to be the player inventory, just like we have a list of items that is the shop's inventory. So let's go ahead and make a player class that's going to have the items, and it's going to have the amount of money he has and all that stuff. So as you can see, we're kind of like making a game here. We've got a player, we've got a shop, we've got items. We're well on our way to making a little dungeon adventure or something. So, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I want to do add class. There we go. So we're going to make player.h and player.cpp. And now I've got a bunch of files. We're going to get rid of the destructor. We're going to get rid of the destructor. Awesome. Okay, so private. The player has a name, string name, and the player has money, int money, and then always include string, and using namespace std. Okay, so now we have a player class. What does he need to be able to do? He needs to be able to hold some items. So we need to include item.h. Very good. And also a list, because he's going to have a list of items. Include, and we could have used a vector like I said before. Include list. All right, so he's going to have list items. Now I think we should actually go ahead and copy some of the functions that we have in our shop. For instance, add one and, sorry, not add one and remove one, that's the item.cpp. Purchase item and add item, we should kind of copy these, and instead of purchase item and add item, it should be remove item and add item. So let's go ahead and, I'm just going to copy these and change them. So remove item and add item. So we're going to remove the item by the name, and we're going to add the item with a new item. So let's copy those into player.cpp. Okay, neat. There we go. And we'll copy this right here. And remove item should be a void. I don't think we really care if the item wasn't there if we try to remove it. We might care, but I don't think we'll care. Okay, so let's go ahead and just copy a lot of this stuff. So add item right here. This can actually, I think, be verbatim. There we go. And items, is that what I called it? Oh, underscore items, of course, because it's a private variable. All right, so add item is exactly the same. Remove item, we're just going to basically copy this and change this little inner part a little bit. This is going to be name instead of new item.getName. And right here, we're just going to say items.erase lit. So that will erase the current item that we're iterating to if we find it. Otherwise, it won't do anything. It'll just return from this function down here at the end. All right, so now we can add items and remove items to the player. All right, so now let's do something about his money. Let's do a void. Let's do getters, void, get money, return money. All right, and void subtract money. And we're going to say int amount. And we can just say money minus equals amount. Am I spelling amount right? No. There we go. Int amount. Now we're getting an error here because these are void functions. This should be int get money right there. And we need a semicolon here. Okay, so now we can get the money and subtract the money from the player. And let's see, we actually need to do the same thing in the shop, right? Because the shop needs to be able to purchase items from the player. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, let's just go back to main, because I'm not sure exactly how we want to do this just yet. Alright, so let's get rid of print inventory, let's get rid of buy items and all that. We're just going to rewrite this stuff as we need to. Goodbye, goodbye, there we go. Alright, so what we're going to do is make a function that initializes our shops and initializes our players. So we're going to say void init shops and void init player. And we're going to pass in a player. So let's include player here at the top. Here.h, and let's also include, instead of item.h, let's include shop.h. And the reason I'm not including item.h anymore is because shop.h has item.h included. So I don't actually need to include it, because remember, this gets copy pasted into main, meaning we will be including item.h in main if we include shop.h. So init shops, init player. So init shops, we should probably pass in like a list of shops to init. So let's go ahead and make some variables in here. We'll say list shop. Let me back that up. Shops, and we're just going to say there's a single player. Right now this is a single player game. Player, and init shops will take a reference parameter of shops so that we can modify it and initialize it correctly. So let's go ahead and copy these two things down here to the bottom, like that, and like this. Okay, so the player, let's go ahead and initialize him. So does the player have a constructor? It does, but we're not really using it. Instead, let's go ahead and just use setters we'll use an initialize function actually. We'll say void init, and this will initialize our player. And we're going to pass in some variables. We'll pass in his name, string name, and we'll pass in his money. So we'll say int money. And we're not going to initialize his items in this function. Instead, we'll initialize that by calling add item and things like that. We'll probably start him out with just something simple. All right, so in player.cpp, we'll put this init function, which will initialize him, and it's pretty much acts as a little constructor that we can call at any time. So name equals name, and then money equals money. There we go. So here in, where is it, main.cpp, we're going to say in init player, we're going to say player.init, and we're going to pass in the name and the money. So I'm going to call myself bin. Now, if you wanted to have a different name, you could just use a cin statement. So let's actually do that. Let's say cout enter thy name, Sir Knight. Here we go. I've used this one before. And then we're going to say string name cin name. And then we're going to init it with that name. And the amount of money you have will be 100 GP, or whatever you want it to be. So that'll initialize our player with that. And let's also give him an item. Player.add item. Now in here, we need to put a new item. Now we could say item, new item here, and initialize it with a constructor. Remember, it doesn't have a default constructor, so this won't work because I have to initialize it with a name and some properties. But instead of making an intermediate variable, what I can do is just type item and then a constructor thing here, a little parentheses, and I can initialize it here, and that will add a new item. So this is actually something new that you're going to learn in this episode. If we use it in another episode, I'll be sure to reiterate it. But yeah, essentially, instead of having to type out a whole item variable, we can just do it all in one line right here. So what does the constructor for item take? It takes a name and a value. So let's give him a sword. We'll say bronze sword. Now, if we were really complex, we would also be giving it like an attack and a defense or something. So the value is going to be 5. The bronze sword is worth 5 gold pieces. There we go. So that will add an item to the player. Now for the shops. Let's add some shops. So let's say shops.pushback. It's going to add a new shop. And we need to make a shop. So remember, like I said, we can do it all in one line. Instead of making a shop new shop or something, we can just do it right here in the same line of code. Now shop, I believe, has a constructor. It does. So let's go ahead and use this constructor. We're going to say string name. Got to flesh it out. Int money. Just like we did with the player. So let's copy this. Go to shop.cpp. Zoom in because you probably can't read any of this. Sorry if you can't actually read any of this stuff. Wasn't actually thinking when I was typing. Hopefully you're watching it in HD. Alright, so shop. String name int money, name equals name, money equals money. There we go. So now when we're in main.cpp, we can push back a new shop with good properties. So we're going to say Bill's leather shop, and he has 500 gold. And let's say the blacksmith, he's got 1500 gold. And Beverly's, and this should have a, I guess possessive. Beverly's fruity fruit shop. Okay, so we've got 3 shops. So this is going to push back 3 shops. What we need to do is actually give these shops some items, okay? So let's separate these with some space so we can figure out how we're going to initialize this. Let's go ahead and say shops.back. That is the last shop that is currently in our list. Now, we just pushed back a new shop right here, so we know Bill's Leather Shop is the last shop, so we can just use this to initialize our shop. So we can say shop.back dot, and then we can say add item to add a new item. So I'm going to say item, and we'll say leather boots, and the value of leather boots is 50. And I'm just going to copy this a few times. We'll say leather boots, leather hat, leather gloves, leather gauntlets, and leather chest piece. Yeah, that works. Now let's copy this for the blacksmith. He's going to sell iron boots, iron hat, iron gloves, all that. And he's also going to sell some weapons, right? Iron sword and iron shield or something like that. Now, if we wanted to get super complex, we could even have categories, right? We could have separate lists in each shop. We could have a list of armor, a list of swords, so we could categorize things, or we could make a property of an item to be like the type, and the type could be boots, or the type could be armor, or the type could be weapon, or something like that. If we wanted to really enhance this, we could do that, but I don't want this episode to take too long, so we're just going to speed through this with some simple properties. And then Beverly's Fruit Shop, I don't know, like a few fruits. I don't know what I'm doing with this one. We're going to say grapes, apples. I like how some of these are plural and some of these are not. Swords, shields. Probably shouldn't be plural. Oh well, sue me. Grapes, apple, orange, watermelon, and tomato, because tomato is a fruit. Alright, now we need to work on the prices here. So the blacksmith has more money. Oh, the fruit shop, she shouldn't have that much. She should have like 250 gold. Iron boots, we'll say 100. Leather gauntlets and all this stuff, 50. Chest piece, 100, sure. Iron hat, 100. Iron gloves, 100. Iron gauntlets, 100. Chest piece, 200. This is all arbitrary. Shield and sword, we'll say shield is 150. Sword is 150. That's good enough. And then these should be like 5. 5, 5, 5, maybe 10, maybe 3. Sure, this works. Alright, so now we have initialized shops. So what we should do, I think, is, let's see. Well, first we gotta call the functions. So let's call init player with player, and then init shops with shops. Okay, so we have a bool is done, blah, blah, blah. Alright, what we should do is ask the player what shop he wants to enter. So let's do an outer while loop. While is done is equal to false. Cout, what shop would you like to enter? Okay. Now, instead of doing it all here, let's make a function. So we're going to say void pick shop, like that. And let's pass in the shops, and it's going to return, it needs to tell us which shop. Unfortunately, I haven't taught you pointers. What's the best way to do this? We don't want to return a copy of the shop. We don't ever want to make copies of these shops. It's okay to make copies of items, but when we copy the shops, that doesn't really make sense because we don't want 2 blacksmith shop. So passing it in by reference makes sense. But for instance, if we made this in this pick shop return a shop, that would be bad. So since I haven't taught you about pointers, I think the best thing to do is to just do it all in this while loop. Sorry, it's going to make our code a little uglier, but we haven't quite learned about pointers yet. What shop would you like to enter? And then, actually before that, we should print out all the shops. So we're going to say shops, shops. And then a new line, and we'll print all the shops right here. So we need an iterator. Let's go ahead and just put our iterator up here. So list shop. Let's actually put it right next to shops. I like to do that. List shop iterator lit for lit equals shops.begin. Lit is not equal to shops.end. Lit plus plus. We haven't tested this once. I wonder how buggy it is. And then we're going to say cout semicolon cout shops, or sorry, starlit in parentheses dot. We don't have the name, so we need to say get name up here. So this is shop.h. Getters string get name return name, like that. All right, back here, now we can call get name. All right, so that will print out the shop name and L. Okay, and let's go ahead and, should we number these? I'm thinking we should number these. Yeah, let's number them. So we're gonna print out, we need an integer, int I equals 0, I plus plus. Actually, let's start at a 1. And we'll print out I, and then a number, and then the shop. There we go. So that will print out all 3 shops. And then we're going to have, we'll do an extra new line right here. It's going to ask what shop you want to enter. And we'll do it like that. Enter it on the same line. And we need an input. So we're going to say string input cn input. So we'll just call it shop name. That makes more sense. I'll need to call it input. Cn shop name. Okay, so now what we need to do is loop through shops again and see if they typed in a name that actually is one of the shop items, or one of the shop names. So we're going to just loop again, and we're going to say if starlit is equal to shop name. So if the name they typed in is equal to the current shop we're iterating through, then we're going to say, oh sorry, shop lit.getName, of course. If that's equal to shop name, then we're going to enter the shop. So what we're going to do is actually enter another function that basically handles like buying and selling items from the shop. So we'll probably just make that function up here at the top. We'll say void enter shop, and we'll enter with the player, and we will enter this shop, whichever shop we pass in as a reference. Remember, we don't want to make a copy of the shop, because whenever we change the shop and the player, we want to make it actually change the original copies. So we'll put that down here. All right, so enter shop will do all of that other stuff. Okay, if that happens, then enter shop, and we're going to enter it with player, and we're going to enter starlit, like that. So we're going to enter the shop starlit, whichever shop that is, and we're going to enter it with the player. Now in here, in enter shop, we're going to actually have another while loop. So we're going to have a bool is done equals false, while is done equals false, and we're going to let the player buy and sell items. So let's print the shop. So shop.print shop. And then let's ask if the player wants to, oh, we need to print the player inventory. Do we have that? We don't. Another function, void print inventory. I'll put all this code up online so you guys can look at it. Void print inventory, and we can basically copy paste the actual, where is that, up below init. We can copy paste the shop print pretty much because it's basically the same thing. That's going to be player print inventory. All right, so shop.cpp print shop. We're going to copy this stuff right here. And there we go. And let's put a cout statement. Cout name names inventory, like that. And stars, always stars. Not sure how good this formatting is going to look yet, but we'll find out. Like that. I'm happy with that. And cout is undefined because we don't have IOStream. There we go. Okay, so that will cout the player inventory. So now we can do that. So we'll print shop, then we'll say player.print inventory. So we'll print both the shop and the inventory. And then whenever we want to make a purchase or something, or sell an item, we're going to I guess we could enter another function. But first let's actually ask what he wants to do. So cout, would you like to buy or sell? And we're going to type a B/S here. So if they type in a B or an S, that means buy or sell. Okay, and so we need a char input. We're going to say cin input. All right, so if input is equal to capital B or input is equal to, I hope I'm zoomed in enough here, equal to lowercase b, this is going to be for buy. Else, if they type anything else in, we're going to assume they meant to sell, even if they type in like a Q or something like that. Okay, so now they have to say what item they want to buy or sell. And that depends completely on if they are trying to purchase from the shop or sell from their inventory. So what we should be doing is, instead of printing out the inventory right away, maybe we should print it out in here. Actually, I think this will be okay. So for sell, we're going to say cout, enter the item you wish to sell, like that. And then we'll make a string up here, string, I'm just going to call it S, or we'll call it string item name, actually. So let's go ahead and cin item name. And let's do the same thing here for buy, enter the item you wish to buy, like that. And if at any time they type in, let's say a Q to quit. There we go. If they type in a Q, let's go ahead and quit. Let's give them a chance to not buy anything. So if input is equal to Q or input is equal to Q, return, like that. So that'll exit the shop if they want to quit the shop. All right, so anyways, where were we? Buying an item, selling an item. Let's start with buying an item. So first we need to see if the shop has that item. So we're going to call shop.purchase item, and then we're going to pass in the name, and we need the, remember, reference parameter item new item, that's going to be the new item that we're returning to the player. So item new item, we'll put it up here. All right, so we'll pass in a new item, and this is returning a Boolean value. So we're going to say if this is equal to true, then what we're going to do is say player.add item with new item. And that should add the item to the player's inventory. Simple as that. Item name. Else, let's go ahead and say cout, that is an invalid item. And let's put a system pause in here. That will say press any key to continue, just so it doesn't immediately print out this other stuff up here. Alright, so that's an invalid item. System pause. That. Okay, now we can do pretty much the same thing. We have to actually subtract money from the shop, don't we? Because right now it's just adding the item. We'll come back to that, because we still haven't tested yet. Let's see if this actually works. No default constructor for item. That's right. So we have to actually initialize this to something, because we don't have a default constructor. So we're going to say no item, and the value is 0. So if we use this later for some reason and it's no item, then we know that something went wrong, because we weren't even supposed to use this item. Okay, enter the item you wish to sell. We're going to say enter item name if player dot remove item. So we do need to make this a boolean, because right now it's not a boolean. So we're going to go up here to the void function and say bool remove item. And we actually need to do the same thing, because the shop is, yeah, silly me, the shop is purchasing an item from the player. So we basically copy what the shop is doing, like that. So bool remove item. Go down here. Where is remove item? Here we go. New item. So we're going to say new item equals starlit. Then we're going to say starlit dot what was it? That's why I'm not getting IntelliSense. I take IntelliSense for granted. Remove 1. And then if starlit dot get count is equal to 0, then we remove it from the player's inventory. Otherwise, we're just going to return true, meaning he did have that item. Return false. There we go. Why am I getting an error here? Items is undefined. The reason I'm getting items is undefined is because I forgot to say that this function belongs to player. Items is a local variable to player, so if this isn't a player function, then how the heck is it going to know how to get items? So now that's going to work. So we can come here to main, player.remove item, and it's going to be item name, comma, new item. If that is equal to true, then we're going to say shop.add item, new item, like that. And then we're going to say, if they didn't type in the right item, same thing, see out that as an invalid item. Alright, so here's our pretty big function. We probably could have split this up a little bit, but I'm happy with it. This will do our shop input. And all you have to do if you want to quit is type a Q right here. So let's see if this works. Let's see if we can move items around between the shop and the player. Or let's see if it crashes and fails, because that could happen too, you know. Alright, function call missing argument list. Remove 1, I forgot parentheses. That's what the argument list is. A lot of these errors are really descriptive. Alright, let's zoom in. How do you do that? There you go. Alright, enter thy name, Ben. Alright, there we go. We have 3 shops. What shop would you like to enter? Man, I gotta type the whole name in. Probably should have made it numbers, but that's okay. The blacksmith. Alright. That did not work. You know why? It's because I haven't taught you guys enough about input. Whenever you type the blacksmith, this is actually 2 separate words, and the cin statement is only going to grab the. It's not going to grab both the and blacksmith. That's not going to work. So I'm not going to teach you that extra input stuff right now. Instead, let's just number it. That's going to complicate things a little bit. Okay, so actually maybe I should just teach it to you. I'll just teach it to you. So there's actually a function called cin.getLine, and I'll be teaching this in another tutorial. So instead of saying cin an item, we're going to call cin.getLine. And all right, so where do we actually do that? Cin shop name right here. Instead, cin.getLine, and I believe it takes a string. I believe. Sorry. What is it called? Shop name. I'd have to pause the video and remember how this works. I don't think so. I think it only takes a C string, which is a little bit annoying. Let's see if we have a get line. Cin string. Sorry, God. Shop name. Shop name. Is that the one? There it is, that's the one. Alright, so there's this awesome function called getLine that will take a line from cin and put it in shop name. So if we type in multiple words, for instance, if we type in the space blacksmith, that's going to take that entire word from or that entire sentence from cin and put it in shop name. I wasn't supposed to teach you new stuff, but I didn't really have a big plan when I went into this tutorial, so sorry, you're going to have to deal with it. Alright, let's see if this actually works. I could be wrong. I think it might actually get the end line. We'll see. Let's see out shop name to be sure. And we haven't done any, let's see, you inputted like that, just to make sure it works as I expect. Now just one thing we didn't do is we didn't check to see if they didn't enter a valid shop. So we're going to say bool valid shop equals false. And right here we'll say valid shop equals true because they typed in a correct shop. And if we get out here and they never entered a valid shop, so if valid shop is equal to false, meaning they typed it in wrong, cout invalid shop, and then a new line and a system pause. Pyth. System pause. Alright, let's see if this huge program works this time. At least the first part. Enter thy name, bin. Alright. Uh-oh. Press any key to continue. What shop would you like to enter? Let me make sure that that wasn't a bug. Enter thy name, bin. There we go. It's giving me an error immediately. I think we have to do cin.clear. I'm about to have to pause the video. cin.clear. Bin. Alright. cin.ignore. And we'll say 64. And we'll say /n. If you're wondering what this is actually clearing the input stream. Whenever I type in, there we go, that fixed it. Whenever I type in bin up here with the cin statement somewhere with init player, whenever I type in bin and I press enter, it leaves like an extra new line in the string. It leaves whenever I press the enter key, it adds a new line, and it stays in cin. And whenever you call getLine, that causes it to get that new line character. So if you want to ever clear the cin, you use this little magic formula right here. You call cin.ignore with a big number, and then the new line character, and cin.clear. And I think it has to be in this order. I think it's ignore and then clear. Or maybe it's backwards. If you have bad input, for instance, if the user types in like a number when you asked for a letter, and normally you'll get like infinite output on the screen, this is how you stop that. If you call this right here, it'll stop that infinite output. I was going to teach you this in another tutorial, but if you're watching this, you're getting ahead of the game. Congratulations, you're learning cool stuff. Alright, so now this is going to work. GetLine should work now, and anytime we call cin, we should probably call this after it. So I'm just going to do that instead of putting it before the getLine. So where we have init player, go to definition. Let's actually just call cin.getLine here in case he wants to type a big name. So cin.getLine, and we're going to say cin to name, like that. So he can put in a big name if he wants to. Sorry, not cin.getLine. That's a different function. A little confusing, I know. That's okay. Alright, enter thy name. My name is Ben. Alright, the blacksmith. You inputted the blacksmith. Hell yeah. And look at that. Let me zoom in. It says, welcome to the blacksmith. My name is Ben's inventory. So look, it's working. cn.getLine works. Hooray. Would you like to buy or sell? We're going to buy. So we're going to say B. Enter the item you wish to buy. Now this isn't going to work because we aren't using getLine. So let's go ahead and change that. And then anytime we call cn, we need to be sure to do this. Ignore and clear every time. Cn item name should be a getLine. So we're going to say getLine cn item name like that. And getLine cn. I wonder how long this episode is. It's probably like 45 minutes. It's like a challenge episode. If you're still with me, congratulations on sticking through with me to this point in the video. Alright, so that's all of our input. All of it works. The last thing we need to do, well first let's go ahead and test and see if we can move items around. Enter thy name, Ben, the blacksmith. Okay, welcome to the blacksmith. Alright, would you like to buy or sell? I'm going to buy. I'm going to buy an iron sword. Look! The iron sword is no longer in the blacksmith. Instead, it is in my inventory. Isn't that just dandy? It works. Alright, let's sell something. We're going to sell bronze sword. And there you have it. The blacksmith now has a bronze sword in his inventory, and I no longer have a bronze sword in my inventory. Now, we could do a little better with this formatting. First of all, we no longer need to say you inputted up here. Instead, we're just going to do a new line. Cout endl. There we go. And I think after print shop or something, perhaps it needed a new line. Wasn't really paying attention. Where is print shop? Print shop, yeah, let's put a new line here. That should make things prettier. Alright, so now the last thing we need to do is check if the player can purchase items. So all we really need to do is probably just make a function in shop to check if it's purchasable. Or purchase item, actually we could, what's the best way? I'm thinking that purchase item, no, let's go ahead and make a new function. We probably could have made this all in one function, but instead I'm going to make two functions. Bool can afford item, string name, and is that a good name? I don't think that's a good name. Bool can afford item. Sure. Y'all gonna comment in the comments with a much better name, I know. Alright, and then int money. So we're gonna see if the player can afford that item. And we'll do this in both the shop and the player's inventory. So shop, print shop, we'll put it right here. We are almost done with this little game that you can integrate into all of your cool little dungeon things. Hopefully you've learned a whole lot of stuff that you weren't supposed to learn yet. Alright, so let's copy all of this. Actually, we'll copy, actually, yeah, that's good. Copy that, except we're not making new items. Alright. So first of all, we're going to say return false here if you can't afford the item, or if the item doesn't even exist. We're just going to say, no, you can't afford it because it's not there. If the item does exist, we need to check if starlit with extra parentheses, starlit dot get value. So if the value of that item is less than or equal to the amount of money you own, then we return true, like that. Otherwise, you can't afford it, sorry, the price is too much, return false. There we go, that's all there is to it. Now we can actually copy this exact function into the player. Oops, I just closed player.h. There we go. So we'll put it below print inventory, doesn't really matter. The only difference is we change this to player. And we need to put this up here, like that. And now we can see if things can be afforded. Alright, so now all we gotta do is make a little bit of a modification to our shop. So enter shop. Here we go. Alright, here's purchase item from the shop. So if shop.canAfford item and item name player dot get money. So if the player has enough money, then we do this thing, which is purchase the item. Else, cout, you don't have enough money. And then player dot add. So what we actually need to do here is also add some money to the shop and remove some money from the player. So let's make another function, void add money, and we don't need to subtract money, we can just pass in a negative number. So int money, and I'm gonna go ahead and define it here. Money plus equals money, like that. And if money here is a negative number, then that's going to actually subtract. And I'm going to also put this in player. That is not zoomed in again. Alright, void add money. So, how do we do this? If the player can afford it, then we're going to say player dot add money negative, and then we need the item, so we actually need to do it after he purchases the item, obviously. So after he purchases the item, player.addMoney negative new item dot get value. So that will subtract money from the player, and let's add money to the shop. So shop.addMoney new item dot get value. So money has just changed hands. Now all we have to do is the opposite for selling. So instead of if shop can afford item, we say if player dot afford item, player dot can afford item, and we'll say item name, and we're going to say shop dot get money. So we're literally just reversing it. Okay, if that happens, else cout the shop doesn't have enough money. Okay, now we need money to change hands. Does shop not have a get money? Well, we can change that. And get money, return money. You better be good at writing getters and setters now. I can't write them while talking. Get money. We are so close to being done. Alright, so if the player can afford the item, then where did we do this? We did it after remove item. So shop dot add money, and it's going to be negative money. So negative new item dot get value. Now this is of course assuming that shops and players buy and sell items at the same price. However, if you wanted the shop to like mark things up, you could just multiply the value whenever you were doing that. So player dot add money, and he's getting money, so it's not going to be negative. There we go. So we are done. Let's take her for a test drive and hope it works. Oh, we actually need to print out the money. We don't know how much money we have. So when we actually print the player inventory, let's also print his money. Cout money, and then money, and we'll say GP for gold pieces. Like that. And let's also cout the shop's money. like that. There we go. All right, let's run it. So now we are seeing the money and everything, and it's going to be oh so cool. Enter thy name, Ben. All right, here's the shops. Let's go into the blacksmith again, because that's the easiest one to type. The blacksmith. Welcome to the blacksmith. He has 1500 GP. I have 100. So we didn't put prices. We probably should have put prices. So I don't know how much any of this costs. Let's do that real fast. Very easy change to print shop. So all we have to do is add an extra field here, price, and then it's going to be starlit.getValue, and then GP, like that. So we'll copy this and just put it in the players inventory right here, I believe. That looks good. All right, now let's run it. Now we're good. Ah, crap, I screwed something up. Get value has parentheses. That's the problem. All right, so I really think this is our final iteration. Enter thy name. Ben. Shops. The blacksmith. All right, there we go. Now we have prices next to everything. Awesome. So I numbered these from 0 because I'm dumb, but that's okay. Would you like to buy or sell? First, let's sell our sword and see if we get 95 GP and they get 1,505 GP. So we're going to sell bronze sword. All right, there we go. It changed hands. The money changed hands. Now let's purchase a iron hat. So buy iron hat. Awesome. We bought an iron hat. Now we have one iron hat. That is just great. So there you have it. I have 5 GP. They have 1595 GP. Now if I buy something else, it'll probably tell me I can't afford it. Let's buy an iron sword. You don't have enough money. Press any key to continue. And I'm going to click Q to quit. There we go. Now we're back at the shops. Now I could have put some extra new lines in here and make it pretty. I'll do that before I put the code online so you can get a much prettier copy of the code. Thanks for joining me for this really long episode, but we did make something really cool. And it only took us, I mean, like 45 minutes, right? Maybe 50 minutes. I'm not sure how long it took, but that's really not that long to make something that's cool like this that you could use in your actual programs. When we go to actually make games, we're going to be spending a lot of time. A lot of programming is spending lots of time doing things, but you learn so much as you go. And, okay, good. Everything's still working. Thanks for joining me. Like I said, catch you next time. The next challenge is going to be really cool, and you could totally enhance the next challenge by using a shop system because it's going to be an RPG game. And we're not going to use graphics just yet because I still want you guys to learn some gameplay, you know, fundamental concepts and things and kind of figuring out how to structure your code before we actually go into graphics. Thanks, guys.